This episode of Smash or Pass will discuss ScoobyNatural, the crossover event that happened with the Supernatural series, so the audience is a bit different and the topics that discussed will be a bit more mature than usual. Viewer discretion is advised. How did I do?
You did very well.
Great.
Okay, well that's out the way. Someone say a swear word.
Well, jeepers! You're listening to Smash or Pass with JayBee, Milly, and Smash!
Okay, so this is the Halloween special.
Happy Halloween!
Smash or Pass, woo!
Woo!
So, as JB said, this is going to be the Supernatural crossover with Scooby-Doo. So, the usual kind of Supernatural team, I guess you might want to call them, are about to enter the cartoon world and become part of one of their well-known Scooby-Doo episodes. But when they enter, the episode starts to take a few twists and turns. And I guess it is kind of, I don't know, it kind of does kind of bring around a topic that JB likes to talk about, which is like time travel, and if you went back and met somebody, how much it would change your story now. And I guess this is just like how things can change if you add new characters into a pre-existing story.
Yeah, a bit like an endgame type situation.
Yeah, so I guess it adds a few interesting elements that way, and it also brings in the supernatural element to Scooby-Doo, which is something that we've seen briefly, but then I guess as we've talked about before, it was kind of discouraged for a little while as well. So yeah, a lot of interesting kind of topics and themes, and as JB said, a very different audience, which I guess it's quite clear from very early on in the episode.
So we've got the usual cast in terms of Supernatural of Jared Padalecki, I think that's how you pronounce it, as Sam Winchester. You've got Jensen Ackles as Dean Winchester, and Misha Collins as Castiel. All of the voice cast for the Scooby Gang are the same voice cast, except from our chronology of podcast, this is the first time we are reviewing Kate Micucci as Velma. So that's interesting. Other than that, you've got Matthew Lillard, Shaggy, Grey DeLisle, Daphne, and Frank Welker as Fred and Scooby, which is good. And it's interesting that they actually managed to get the voice cast here. Perhaps we'll discuss that a bit later on as well. But before we get into the episode, I kind of want to gauge where everyone's at. Starting, I guess, with Smash, because I already know the answer for Millie. How much of the Supernatural show have you seen apart from the ScoobyNatural crossover?
So before this special episode had come out, I had seen nothing of it. When I was in high school, it was like all the rage. Like, I've had so many friends and people I know that, you know, were and are like super into it. I remember in this one class, I had an art class, and this girl that I grew up with, you know, like we went to school together for quite some odd years, but she got really into it and she started doing a bunch of art, you know, based on the show and stuff. And, you know, I'd hear stuff kind of from her when we were sitting in that class about it and whatever, but I never really knew exactly what it was. I just knew, you know, there's these two brothers and they're ghost hunters type of thing. And then, like, you know, once more my friends started watching, I was like, oh, they're, you know, they deal with a little more than just that. But I had never seen an actual episode. Then I watched this, and then after I watched this, I watched maybe one or two others just like randomly out of the blue. You know, they were kind of like on TV and my friends had it on or whatever. But otherwise, I've seen like nothing of this show. This ScoobyNatural is legit the only like full segment of Supernatural that I've actually sat down, paid attention to, and know what it is.
Yeah, I guess we're in exactly the same position then, which makes a change for a Smash or Pass episode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess this is the perspective of Scooby fans as opposed to Supernatural fans. I don't know how common that is. I've not really searched up any ScoobyNatural reviews online, but I guess I suspect similarly that a lot of people will be watching it for Supernatural, so perhaps this is a different perspective. And yeah, of course, similar to me, I had like so many friends in school that would love Supernatural. Like I had one friend that tried to get me to watch it, and every time I was kind of like, no, you know, I don't really want to commit myself to a show, because I was never really into like TV at the time. I was just kind of more into films. But I guess, Millie, did you ever hear about the Supernatural show before this?
Not until you introduced me to ScoobyNatural.
Okay, so a fresh set of eyes there, and it's definitely one that I've been looking forward to. So of course, like we mentioned, this is our Halloween special, so it will be going out on Halloween night at usual time. It should almost be a back-to-back, I want to say that we would have premiered a normal episode of this the night before.
I'm just watching your brain turning as you were trying to work out which one it would be on the spot there.
Was it? Would it be stage fright?
No.
Or would it be the one after stage fright?
I'm
I
kind
think
of
it
like...
would be 2 after that.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with
really?
SmASH. So,
I think technically it should
On
be
the
Frankencreepy.
yeah, so on the 9th, then would have been a mystery map. The 16th is stage fright. What's after stage fright?
Oh, God.
WrestleMania mystery.
And then
Frankencreepy.
yeah, so SmASH got it
I'm
right.
not looking forward to WrestleMania mystery.
Oh,
but
God,
let's
me neither.
let's move on here.
My brother has a full wrestling channel, and I'm like, he can replace me that week.
Oh no, and his wife can replace me that week, eh?
Who's gonna replace me?
Well, no, SmASH is irreplaceable.
Maybe the nephew that like decided to watch Mystery Map 10 times, like they're ready to commit to anything.
True.
Oh my lord. What the heck? But Frankencreepy would have been Halloween special enough. I don't know what we're doing. God, okay. But this is one that I really want to speak about.
Double dose.
And it's a special in that this wouldn't be anything that we would have covered normally. Even if we did go all out and we did the movies, we did the TV shows, this wouldn't be something that would have fit into that chronology. So it's why it's a special, and I'm excited to dive into it. So who is going to kick us off?
So I guess let's just like talk through the plot and stuff. So honestly, I think it starts off quite comedically. So they're kind of running, getting chased by a green dinosaur. And to me, the reason that I find this funny is because if you think about what Scooby-Doo is it's quite often a group of people and someone in a costume. And it's like, oh my gosh, if you unanimated this is kind of what it'd look like.
Yeah.
Like, imagine like if this wasn't animated and it was just people in a costume, it could look like this. And this just looks so strange and awkward and just surreal. But this is actually what the thing is. This is what Scooby-Doo is. It is just people and some costume with a person in it. But then when my mind was that, and it's a costume with a person in it, for it to then start on fire, and I was a bit like, okay. Kind of not happy with that. That took a quick turn.
Although I do wish I'd dived into Supernatural a bit more, because a part of me is wondering, is this kind of dinosaur that we've got at the start purposely comedic and purposely, I guess, a child family friendly approach on a monster to appeal to the new viewers watching for the Scooby stuff? Because there's stuff later on that makes me think that they didn't water it down too much, but at the same time, a part of me is wondering to what extent they adapted to fit in with Scooby viewers, and that remains to be unclear, I guess, throughout, but
yeah,
it's fun regardless.
It is fun.
Instantly, I'm liking the chemistry of these two quite a lot. Although, I don't know if I'm going to get hate from Supernatural fans, but I feel like all throughout, I like Dean a lot more than Sam, consistently.
Yeah, I feel like he's the one that you relate to, though, isn't it? Because it's like, oh, yay, Daphne. Oh, Daphne. Daphne's great. Let's be with Daphne. Oh, Daphne, let's share a room. Hey, literally, my entire notes for this is just things that they've said that JayBee would say in exactly the same position. Like, dibs on Daphne, she's settling. It's literally just an entire quote list. Like, oh, JayBee would have said that too.
Well, maybe, but I'm just thinking, we've got this Dean fella. Very, very handsome lad, very funny, very charismatic.
You're only saying this because you're related.
I'm related. I wish I was related. Well, okay. But no, I can relate to him, not just through the Daphne thing, but I'm not.
So you acknowledge it's something.
Maybe a bit. It's a bit. It's enthusiastic fanaticism. That's what I'm gonna call it. It isn't. But I'm all for this kind of double act.
It's really nice, and I think this set it up well. Like, you don't need to have seen normal Supernatural episodes to be like, oh, well, that's who they are. They do build that dynamic quite quickly, quite nicely. Like, when the dinosaur thing explodes and they're walking out of the television, there's just, like, some back and forth there, and it's just like, okay, it's just, like, this light-hearted, comedic kind of relationship. It's nothing too heavy.
Yeah, I guess a part of me is blown away that this takes place in the 13th season of Supernatural. So for people that have been watching it all throughout, like even us watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer, all the characters in that show have a lot of like emotional baggage and plot baggage, even from season 4. You know, if you're hopping in there, so I can only imagine what these characters have been through throughout those series. And almost, I think they've just finished wrapping up Supernatural from what I can believe. Or at least the final season's DVDs just hit shelves relatively recently. So
maybe this one was recorded and designed with the fact that Scooby fans are coming over in mind, so it tried to remove some of that baggage and stuff.
Yeah, because it seems very light-hearted for a 13th season, right?
Yeah.
I know that's kind of weird to say, but I guess they might have lost some cast members due to supernatural death or something. I don't know.
Yeah, one thing that I wasn't expecting is like for it to be supernatural and stuff, and obviously this takes certainly aimed at an older audience. I was expecting that level of an older audience, not things like Be Like Elsa and Let It Go.
Oh, it's funny though.
It was funny.
Yeah.
It was, but I was like, okay. I don't know, maybe I just think of myself as too young, but to me that was like a young joke.
No, but that's what I like about Dean. He's almost like a man-child in his humor. Like it just seems like he's what would happen if you made the funny kind of sidekick a main character. Like if like we mentioned Buffy, if Xander had his own show,
yeah.
like just the quips, the kind of humor. And I did really like it, and I think it almost works in a contrast to Sam, because Sam kind of looks at him like, oh, did you really just say that? And that's a kind of a theme all throughout. It's very, you get the brotherly dynamic. I think I had to research to find out that they're meant to be related in the show. But regardless, you kind of get the impression that one's almost the strict one, yeah, and the other one's the kind of one that wants to goof about and have fun. And it's a bit of a tired trope, to be honest. Like it's like standard buddy cop stuff. But it definitely works in the context of this, especially with it being such a wacky episode.
Yeah. So I guess the way that they get launched into the Scooby-Doo world is the TV's been a bit strange. There's all this purple lighting, and then it just zaps them in and they turn into cartoon versions of themselves. Which again is quite interesting. I think they translated it quite nicely. And not only do they transfer in, but then the car's there. And again, that's something that I found really funny and like relatable to Scooby-Doo, because wherever they go, the mystery machine just appears. Like, oh, we're in Australia, here's the mystery machine. We're going on a boat, no worries, it's just airlifted on.
I didn't think about it like that. They rationalise it that one of them had the car keys with them. But, like, you kind of have to think, how far does that go? Like,
yeah, just like, oh, I have a biscuit in my pocket, the entire packet's there now.
Or
like,
I'm wearing a jacket, now my wardrobe's come with me. Like,
yeah.
You know, like, how far does it go? But it's nice that you've explained it that way, like, almost like they're satirising, or like they're kind of making a bit of fun.
I just feel like there have been a few parallels already. Like I said, that like, in real life it would just be some strange furry costume and people, and then the mystery machine just turns up everywhere in their car. I feel like there are just some nice little parallels that can be picked up on.
One thing I do want to ask Smash is, do you know if the animators that animated this episode worked on Scooby-Doo? Because it's very, very similar to the kind of art style of Abracadabra Doo onwards.
Yes, actually. So it is the same. They use the same animation as the direct to video movies that we've been watching. And actually the director who did the animation directing, not the live action parts, but the actual animation portions, worked on several Scooby movies that we've just watched.
Oh, okay. So it's weird because before we started recording, I believe we established that this came out in about 2018, and I'm almost thinking that like when we were watching this, I was like, this seems like we're in the same type of era, so it makes sense.
It does.
But in regards to them appearing there, it almost, and I think rightly so, rushes into the plot. Like, they don't take much time to explore mechanics, like, you know, if I start digging, will I get anywhere, or is this plant real? Like, they just literally just rush to go straight to the nearest location, which is right, because that's the kind of
which
USP.
is the malt shop. And then they see the mystery machine outside, and it's like, this is Scooby-Doo. And then I was like, few titles, because it did this transition. I was a bit disappointed. I don't know if that's the standard titles for for Supernatural.
I would say that,
but it was literally just
logo,
a title on the screen. Whereas I don't know, I quite like music and stuff, so I was a bit like,
yeah, it like sets you up for the typical like Scooby-Doo "Where Are You" opening, and then transitions. But then I always think about the crossovers that I've seen on the CW, like when Flash would meet up with Arrow. They wouldn't like linger on the titles. It would just be like a lightning bolt, then an arrow, and it would be a mishmash. Like, so
I guess that makes sense. It's just like JB and I normally enjoy titles a lot. Like, we'll either dance to them together, or like there's one on Netflix, I'm thinking maybe Daredevil, possibly. And it literally is just like instrumental, and we literally just tap the rhythm out on each other's legs and stuff, just like dun 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 dun, dun, like this. So I guess, like I said, we just enjoy the intro music for things a lot, so it's like, they could have done something there, but that's okay. So yeah, I just put titles could maybe be better.
Supernatural.
Which is weird, because I'm wondering, and I don't know if you know any behind the scenes context, Smash, but why was this made? Because there always has to be a reason why. Now, I guess the options that I'm thinking of initially is maybe Supernatural wanted some more fans from Scooby for some reason, or maybe Scooby just wanted to promote their stuff by getting into something that was popular at the time. At the same point, though, obviously, behind the cameras, behind the script writing, there's people that are producing that content. And I'm kind of like, was a writer just a really big fan of Scooby-Doo and they wanted to be involved in it? And I don't know, because it makes sense, and I do really like this episode, you know, spoiler alert, but I'm wondering why they made this.
I'm thinking it lines up with the 50 years, doesn't it? Because I think
almost
Smash said
it's
when
a
we
year
were
off.
recording earlier, it was like 52 years or something.
A year off, huh? But do you know behind the scenes, Smash?
Yes. So first of all, I haven't really watched any Supernatural, but one of the friends I live with has seen it all, has seen all of Supernatural. And so, a lot of the stuff I will hear from her about this show, but all throughout this Supernatural series, I do not know the brothers apart. I think it's Dean. The one that likes Daphne.
JayBee and the other one.
He has always had a fondness for Scooby-Doo throughout the show, and they actually showed Scooby-Doo, like, the classic episodes throughout the series, like him watching it or having it on the background and stuff, and they always referred to Scooby-Doo as, like, their inspiration for ghost hunting and whatever. And then, like, off camera, outside of the series, they actually tried to do this for several seasons, trying to do this crossover. It just took them a long while to actually get to this point. But then Jim Craig and Jeremy Adams, who this is gonna make people kind of go, holy crap, what? Jeremy Adams is the writer of Return to Zombie Island. He did this prior to Return to Zombie Island. And then Jim Craig has been with Scooby-Doo since the early 2000s, but they finally came up and were like, hey, you know, we want to do this. What do we need to do to make this happen? Like, you know, because it is such a contrast of shows, because Supernatural has swearing, has gore, has, you know, this and that, whereas Scooby's kind of the kid-friendly version of Supernatural, if you will. And, you know, especially in the era that we're in right now, they don't like supernatural stuff in Scooby. And so they were, you know, they basically were like, how do we, you know, what do we have to do to make this happen? And this was actually a rare occurrence where the studio said, go make a story, bring it to us, and we'll see. And so Jim Craig and Jeremy Adams went and penned out a story, you know, worked out what they would want and kind of how they would put both properties into this episode. And they brought it back to the studio and said, okay, here's what we want to do. And basically the studio said, all right, go for it. And they were like, what? We're not changing anything? They were like, no, go have fun with it. So literally this is such a rare occurrence where they had almost ultimate freedom to do anything with this, and that's why they got away with a lot of it. I will say there's someone who worked on this episode. I'm not saying names because I'm trying to be nice, but and I mean they played it out well in the episode, but the whole reason that like towards the end of the episode they were like, oh, we have to make it fake for the gang and stuff, it's because someone in this project doesn't like Supernatural and Scooby, so they had to get their way in the end. And anyway, yeah, so it was literally just one of those things where they had been trying for years, and then they finally just got to a point where they said, you know, okay, go for it. And they basically made this a one-off episode. You don't need to know anything prior Supernatural to go into this episode. You don't need to know anything afterwards. You know, they might bring it up in future episodes, but it's nothing that like a Scooby fan needs to see or whatever. And so yeah, this is literally just a one-off episode, and why I think that they should release this episode on a standalone DVD, because I want to own it.
Yeah, that would be cool. And it's really nice to hear that there's some kind of history behind it, because I guess that way it makes sense. Like, it could literally be that they'd set the TV up, they'd put Scooby on, and that's why it was that show they were dragged into, because it's something that you would know they enjoyed watching. Yeah. So I guess it makes sense. It's not just completely random, so there's good context behind that. And them arriving at the, like, actually in the like Scooby-Doo world, I'm pretty sure one of the first things that I think it's Dean, the one that I'm going to call the JayBee one, is literally like dibs on Daphne. It's one of the first things that they say.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, JayBee has entered Scooby-Doo.
That's mad. If I was Dean, I guarantee you I would spend 95% of my day topless in front of a mirror. Like, I'd be flexing and everything. I don't think I'd be simping. I'd just be looking at myself in the mirror. That's what I'd be doing.
See, this is the thing, is I feel like a lot of the dynamic of the first 10 minutes, for all they managed to get set on a mystery, is so much it's literally just about Daphne. Like, dibs on Daphne, oh, she's settling, let's race against Fred because he's not good enough. And then the other one's like, why do you hate him so much? And it's just like, just shush, we're racing. Like, we're going to beat Fred, and then they obviously don't.
I mean, to be fair, and I don't know, it's weird, but I do feel like they may have, I don't know, maybe I'm just seeing things that aren't there, because I was almost thinking that there was external influence from other animators. But I thought, looking at this episode, that they seemed to make Daphne a bit curvier, if I can say
They
that.
did.
Like,
They did that on purpose.
yeah, and I wasn't sure if I was seeing something that wasn't
How
there.
do
if I
you
was just-
notice this, JB? I genuinely didn't pick up on that.
Well, yeah. Well, yeah,
Did you hear that laugh?
I just look. I am reviewing this for a show that's very near and dear to me, the Smash or Pass podcast. I was watching intently. I just noticed
You know
that
who else is near and dear to him? Daphne.
I just noticed that there were things that aren't as
Yeah.
prominent in certain things, and so I was a bit like, maybe that's a little bit, dare I say, unnecessary, but in context, I'm almost like thinking it could be the way that they perceive the characters, or even because they're meant to be like the original form. And I think back then, and maybe I'm digging too deep into this, but if Daphne was put on there as almost animation eye candy, she was just there to be a bit danger prone. It wasn't to the stage where she was her own independent person when she was the fighter of the group. Maybe that's like the modern translation, like if they were animating Daphne for that time period, but with today's technology, would that be how she looked a bit more? And I'm inclined to think yes, but also it's probably just to cater to some of the jokes that they have later on. But I mean, she looks good, yeah. Like, I wish our TV could do this. That's what I'm gonna say.
I'd smash the TV while you were still in there, just like, oh, he's gone.
Oh, yeah, I'd be trapped in there.
Yeah.
Oh, lordy.
So then I guess it takes a bit of a weird turn because we're still trying to work out what's going to happen other than them drilling over Daphne, I guess. And they're literally like, oh yeah, I've seen this episode. It's that guy. And it's like, okay, well, if we know who it is, where's it going to go from here? What's it going to do? I feel like we're starting to maybe ask some questions at that point. And then it's just going back to drilling over Daphne, like, hey Daphne, it gets cold here. Do you wanna share a room?
No, cool.
And she's like, boys and girls have to have different rooms, silly. And it's like, okay.
Let's add a bit of prestige to the episode and consult with our resident Scooby expert. What are the differences and similarities between the events of this episode before all the shenanigans and the actual episode? I believe they say it's a night of fright is no delay.
Yeah, so they actually jumped into an actual episode of Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? There's a handful of differences. Some actually kind of bother me, not gonna lie, but they stick to the original story overall, and like the differences do make sense for the crossover, you know, for some of the fun things, but like something at the very beginning is that they actually have to take a boat to this mansion because it's on like this island and stuff, and so the original episode starts out with them in a boat reading the newspaper, whereas, you know, in this they drive, and that the only reason they did that is so that they could race the vehicles and stuff, you know, which is fun and all. I know, you know, difference wise in towards the beginning, they definitely used more so of the mansion of the original opening of Scooby-Doo Where Are You rather than the actual mansion of the episode, just trying to make it a little more iconic, I think, in what people will recognize a little easier. They kept actually the original villain, you know, obviously just changed up his design a little. There were two in the original episode, but you know, they actually kept the original villain, which I thought was fun, which, you know, is just the Phantom Shadows is usually what they're called, or the Giggling Green Ghosts, whatever version you want to say. I'll say, just for me personally, there's a whole bathroom scene with Scooby where, you know, he's like having his night routine in the original episode, and then, you know, he sees the ghosts and stuff and gets scared, and that gets cut because we have Dean getting in a robe and is all like, this is so comfy and whatever. Now I was a little disappointed. I don't know why. I was just like, that little bathroom scene with Scooby, because to me, that's just a cute but I know this is a crossover and it's supernatural. It's not Scooby. I have to look at it in that eyes. But and we never, again, this is all because it's a crossover and stuff. You know, it's different from the original, but we actually, in the original episode, never get a scene with Velma and Daphne talking in their room with each other. But that's, you know, to that point, those are kind of the differences. They're also never in a malt shop in this episode.
So I guess they're just picking iconic tropes for the sake of almost, I guess, nostalgia. Like, if you're just a Supernatural fan, you've not seen Scooby for years, it's stuff that you would instantly go, oh wow, I remember that from when I was a kid. So I guess it makes a bit more sense. Now, a bit of a nerdy question. Do you consider this episode, or this crossover, to be canon to the overall Scoobyverse, be it causing a branch timeline, or is it just shenanigans?
So, you know, I've actually talked about this with some other people, and what I like to believe is that, you know, so the original episode, which is Night of Fright is No Delight, you know, of Scooby-Doo, that is the original timeline version of this story. And for me personally, how I like to believe it is that when Sam and Dean go into this episode, it's like both of the timelines clash for that like 1 second, and so there's almost a minuscule parallel timeline, if you will, and so it doesn't mess with the original timeline of Scooby-Doo, let's say, but there's almost 2 copies of this moment in the timeline where timelines clash each other, and so you know, for Supernatural, it's canon to them, but for Scooby-Doo, it's not canon to them. That's how I like to see it.
See, it's funny because I was almost speculating that maybe the intervention of this genuinely paranormal world could have caused a branch timeline where, you know, this kind of new group would be the ones to face the real threats in Zombie Island, which is Ghost. But I don't know. Obviously, like, that wouldn't be like official canon because they wouldn't kickstart that universe in a crossover. But it's kind of just interesting to think about. For all the kind of, like you say, you know, there's someone that tried to make sure that the gang thought that it was an unmasking. The fact that it genuinely wasn't proves that there is some supernatural elements present in this universe, at least for a little bit, is kind of interesting. But I guess that's neither here nor there.
You know, I do like to believe, though, like, I get what you're saying, and I honestly do like to believe that, in a way, this kind of, like, slipped Supernatural into the Scoobyverse, and so, you know, if you want to see it in a timeline aspect for Scooby-Doo, then it's like, in this little moment, that's when all of a sudden, you know, it, like, kicked off 13 Ghosts of Scooby-Doo, you know, Zombie Island, and all the other supernatural stuff. It's like, oh, because of this one little slipstream moment in the timeline, all of a sudden it blew open the doors of supernatural, you know, like it slipped some supernatural into the Scooby universe, and that's kind of what, you know, comes down the road. You know, I think that's kind of what you were saying, and I really do like that idea. It's just, you know, how much of this is really canon because it's so, you know, what, 48 years later?
Yeah, it's a while, but it's always fun to speculate on stuff like that, especially in like some of the retcons that they've tried to do, like in Curse of the 13th Ghost, Return to Zombie Island. It could almost be interpreted as, you know, that's a sequel to the version of Zombie Island that we haven't seen, in which A Night of Fright with No Delight wasn't interfered with, if that makes sense. Like a sequel to a film that took place in the original timeline versus our version of Zombie Island, which may have taken place in a universe where A Night of Fright is No Delight was interfered with. A bit complicated saying it like that, but it's interesting because obviously all this timeline stuff is just so fun to speculate on. But it's fun to just have the supernatural elements in here again, and I was a bit worried that we were never going to see it again in this series, at least after, I want to say, was it Goblin King was the last time that it was somewhat supernatural? At least for us in our chronology.
That we've seen so far, like for the podcast.
Yeah.
Technically, yes. You could maybe count Camp Scare with that one after credit scene, but technically, yeah, Goblin King.
Oh yeah, you can't scare. And obviously coming up, you know, there's some stuff in different mediums. But yeah, I like this an awful lot. And again, I'm just starting to like these characters as well. Like, I think they're all just so funny, and I'm not finding anyone unlikable. Like, you've got Velma kind of chiming in, saying to, I think, Sam, you know, oh my gosh, you know, ghosts aren't real, I don't know why you believe in them. Which initially would be annoying, but I think it's just showing that, more than anything, it's what this Scooby Gang believes, in contrast to what the Supernatural team know, as opposed to Velma trying to debunk things.
Yeah.
So we've got Dean, who's continuing. Well, he wants to stop the gang from knowing that they're in a cartoon, which is interesting. I don't quite know why that is. I think they kind of reason it as they want to keep them pure, and like, I don't know. But that's kind of their motive. And there's some spoofs on like the obvious nature of the original series, I suppose, like with the kind of villain cackling and the like spoiler alert, that's who does it.
Yeah.
But did that cackle happen in the initial episode?
Yes. I have a video pulled up right now of side by side between the actual episode and the Supernatural episode, and a lot of these scenes actually are directly recreated. It's actually cool to see what they actually, in a sense, reanimated for this special. But yeah, that really did happen. He was like, "Okay, have a good night," and then had this whole like elongated laughter and whatever, and they were like, "Okay, that was weird," you know.
That's actually really funny then, because they're literally almost making commentary on the earlier episodes.
Yep.
I guess you remember the original episodes a lot more than I think we do. Do you think that they made a right choice basing it on this episode, or is there like one that you'd have rather seen over this?
I think this was honestly the best choice if we were going off of the actual original series, because this was kind of, you know, for its time, the darkest episode in that era. You know, there's another one that you might could have considered, which was the Haunted House Hang-Up, which had a headless specter, and like at one point the gang finds a head in a box and stuff. You know, it's kind of a creepy one, but overall, this definitely was the scariest and creepiest episode of the original series, and so it honestly made sense to do this one. I think villain-wise, specifically, it's not the best choice. I think, you know, if they were going to go purely off of a villain, you know, I would have done one that's more iconic, but atmosphere-wise, this definitely, I think, was the best choice.
Yeah, I would have loved to have seen, and I don't know the episode name, but the one with the ghost clown, just because I think it would have been so funny to like have like one of the Supernatural team be like hypnotized and frustrating the other one. I think that would have been really funny.
Yeah.
So, so we get that scene that you mentioned wasn't in the original, which was Daphne and Velma talking. And it's kind of interesting because it's something that we don't really see too much in the original series. And I'm almost thinking that they're adding to the kind of mythology of the series where they're almost building moments in between the original characters where Daphne and Velma are opening up to each other. They're kind of almost gossiping, but it obviously is all in the purpose of serving a joke later on, which is very funny.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see. So the Phantom Shadow then appears in a very spooky sequence, and they all go to investigate, screaming that they hear. And this is kind of where we start to get the inkling that something's dreadfully wrong with the episode that we know. So there is a literal murdered body in one of the beds. It's been stabbed. There's like blood everywhere. And we get like a load of different catchphrases. I don't think Fred says hold the phone, like not even like retconned. I don't think anyway. But we get, Jeepers, Jinkies, and then I think it's Dean's just like, oh, son of a bitch, like
Yeah.
and it's almost shocking because prior to that, he's been holding back his language, and later on we'll see that it's actually beeped out. But here he's just outright with it, and it's kind of funny. But I don't know. It's weird. And again, I come back to this point of where I'm surprised that Warner Brothers or the creatives let this happen, because I thought that they were very protective over what the gang is allowed to do and what is not allowed to do. In that, I think even like some fan fiction or like fan movies have gotten into trouble for trying to make things a bit dark. So again, it baffles me that this has actually been allowed to happen, but I'm definitely enjoying it. But is this the first time that we've seen blood in the Scooby series?
I think so, right?
Yes.
Was there no blood in Zombie Island?
Mm-mm.
So this is crazy. Like, I think it does the job extremely well, because we do see deviations, and I almost think it would have been a lesser episode if they'd just been zapped into Scooby-Doo and there wasn't the contrast between an original episode. I think they've made the right choice to do it that way, because we do just see that it's harrowing. But are we meant to interpret that, like I think Dean and Sam are both speculating, are the gang just unaware of what's happening to them that's a deviation, or do they just not care about blood and stabbed bodies?
I think in the context of the original series, especially when it was made, back in the late 60s, early 70s, I think for those characters specifically, yes. I think if they were to have done a newer episode of Scooby-Doo, the gang wouldn't have been so like, what? No, this doesn't happen. It's totally normal, But the fact that they went back to an original episode, I can believe it more.
That's kind of interesting, because if you think about what you were saying with them being fans of Scooby-Doo, that's why they've kind of been zapped in here, which isn't what I initially thought. I was thinking that because the ghost is eventually revealed to be a child, that maybe it was one of their favourite shows, so perhaps that would have been why they were brought here. But it makes a lot more sense that one of them are a fan of it because it was their TV. Maybe that's what was on. But at the same time, it's just so interesting to think about, if they chose another era to kind of set it all in. I just think that would have been really funny if maybe it was the Be Cool series, because that just would have been wacky to a whole new level.
Yes.
Can you think of any different series that you'd have liked to have seen it in, Milly? Well, I guess movies. They could have put it into one of the movies. That would have been cool.
That would be cool.
That's like, can you imagine if they would have gone to Zombie Island? How freaking cool they could have made the Zombie Island story with Supernatural in it.
Yeah, especially later on when they get like the trunk of weapons. It almost could have been like a Walking Dead type beat 'em up with all the zombies. Oh, and the cat people as well. Oh no. Now I'm gonna start getting into the habit of writing fan fiction. Oh.
Well, and if you think about it too, I'm sure we would have seen a lot more, depending on how extensive they went with this episode. I wonder if we would have gotten more scenes of like the backstory of Simone and Lena, because like in the movie we get to, we barely see and then just have to interpret that, those pirates chased a lot of those villagers into the swamp, and then we see the alligators come, and then we have to interpret, oh, they were eaten by alligators, and I'm like, we probably would have seen something of that.
Yeah. Or like contrasting technology. How would that demonic TV have cooperated with the laser from the cyber chase, since they more or less do the same thing? Like,
Yeah, true.
that's interesting. Oh, I'm gonna start writing fan fiction about this now. That's mad. That's mad. I like that though. But we are in this story, not like a movie. Oh, it just would have been cool. So we see that Dean's trying to belittle Fred to impress Daphne, because Fred's just like not interested in this dead body at all, and Dean's like, oh yeah, Fred can just be a bit of a jerk sometimes, and Daphne's like, no, not really. But it makes sense, right? Because I don't know, I guess they're just fitting into what they would have been written like at the time, without I don't want to say emotionless, but there's not really a conflict. Like, say if they were injected into the world of Mystery Incorporated, I'd almost say that for the gang, they would have almost acted very much like they were in a Supernatural episode themselves. I don't think they would have been much different, but here it's kind of all different. But I like how it raises the stakes. Like, we can't just rely on the fact that we know who did it, we know that things are going to be okay, because the real threat's here, and what's dangerous is that the gang don't even know it at this point. So I do like it, especially when we get to scenes of the Phantom Shadow attacking, and Fred's just lunging towards them, because from the gang's point of view, it's just business as usual, but knowing what we know, it's extra scary just to see how unaware they are of the danger.
Yeah.
But then we get a character that appears called Castiel, who, again, not watching Supernatural, I have no clue what they are or what their job is, but they do remind me a bit of a character from Torchwood. I don't know if you've seen that, but the way that they kind of introduce themselves in the flashback, like, oh, I've come back from this place and I have to meet up with the queen of this colony and I'm pretty sure I'm married to them now. It seems like something that dialogue that you'd get in Doctor Who or something like that. So I was all for that. But it struck me as a bit odd, because I was thinking that this character could almost be a main character, but then they're kind of put in the realm of Shaggy and Scooby, which of course they are main characters in their own right, even to the point of view where they've had their own shows, they've been in TV shows where the gang have been cut out. But almost like, I kind of want to say the sidekick role in the team overall is what they kind of pushed into, like the ones that always draw the short straw of being live bait. So if Supernatural fans are listening to this and they want to comment below what Castiel's role is, I'm very curious to know that, because I really can't tell at this point.
Yeah, Castiel, just again from my little knowledge from my friend, is basically kind of the sidekick character in Supernatural. He's basically like their guardian angel, and so that's a lot of like some of the things he says. We're not totally going to understand if we haven't seen the show, but yeah, he is basically just like that third extra character in this show.
Yeah, it's odd to say, but I'm also a bit shocked that Supernatural at this point doesn't seem to have any female main characters. Like, not in like a politically correct way, but it's kind of weird not to see a dynamic. Yeah, it's not a very diverse cast, which I guess is okay, but it kind of got me thinking, surely if they're like ghost hunters, maybe there's some more side characters that we just don't see in this world. But I think they wouldn't have time to do that, really, would they? It always got me thinking, what would happen if the gang traveled into the Supernatural world? Like, would we suddenly be getting, Linda Cardellini coming out? Would it be, would it be Kate Middleton? Would it be Sarah Michelle Gellar? Or would it be Grey that would actually come out? It's weird to think, if it was flipped the other way, what the gang would look like in their world.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you think, Millie? Like, if the gang was zapped into the Supernatural world, are you thinking that they would almost be new actors, or do you think? Cause I'm almost regretful that that didn't happen. Not just because I'd love seeing the live action cast, but it would almost be cool just to have them come into the real live action world, at least for the last section, just to see that everything is wrapped up. But I almost feel like that's something that maybe Smash was talking about that was kind of robbed from us because of the need for the gang to stay in the dark.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with that. Like, well, it would have been cool to see them. We know that Frank Welker doesn't necessarily look like Fred.
Yeah.
Granted that Velma and Daphne, they sometimes have tried to get them to look similar, but Frank Welker just doesn't look like Fred. So it's kind of like, okay, well, how would you pass that off? And I think that one of the things that does make ScoobyNatural so good and appealing is that they did use that original cast. It's voices that we've grown to, really love, like, and associate with Scooby. So that makes it in itself a bit more engaging, I want to say.
Yeah, I agree with that. And then obviously you've got that kind of situation where apparently, Scooby would just be really expensive to animate, or I guess they could have got a real Great Dane on board, but probably wouldn't have hit.
You know what I wish they would have done, which, a total different time period at this point, and how would they've known? But I would have loved to get the cast that's doing that fan Mystery Incorporated YouTube series and have them come out, because then it's just like fresh new faces, and young enough to be these characters, and they're even using a real Great Dane. Which my question would be for that is, would they make Scooby talk if he came out in this show or not?
That's a good point, and I'm almost thinking that if it was them in the supernatural world from the look of things, probably not. I'm guessing it would be relatively realistic up until a point. Now, I don't know if there's aliens in the supernatural universe, but I think if they really wanted to, they could have canonized the Anunnaki past of Scooby a bit more and tied that in with a previous kind of section of the mythology, and that's how he could speak. But if aliens aren't a thing in Supernatural, I would say they would just be Great Dane that has a good sense of smell and can bark when there's something that needs to be brought to their attention. So, back to the kind of world of the animated, we get a very, very horrific scene, very gory, which it appears one of the Phantom Shadows has beheaded someone and has kind of
insane.
Scrambled their body about.
I never thought I'd see something like that associated with Scooby-Doo. Which it's stuff like that is why I'm like, oh my gosh, how did they get the same actors? How did they get the same animators? It's a lot.
Yeah, but I'm glad that they did it this way, because I feel maybe it would have been seen by more people. It might have been trending more if they'd marketed it as they'd marketed the Courage crossover. It was a full direct, to DVD movie. There was a full trailer, everything like that. And also it would have easily slipped into an episode of Guess Who, but then I feel like it would just be such a watered down version of what it seems like Supernatural's about, that fans of Scooby would just feel like there's two members of the gang that are acting funny but unnecessary. Supernatural fans would think that their characters have just been censored too much. So I'm glad that they went this route with it. But I don't know how. I don't know. I just feel like at this point it may be, if I'm going to bring a negative into it, gore for the sake of gore. Because unless the gang's going to react to it in a way that would actually make, I don't know, if they're going to, and they do this later on, if they actually question stuff like, why is this happening? If they actually got freaked out by that, that would be different. But if they're not going to notice it, then it's just Dean and Sam, I think, seeing just what they would see normally but animated, and I'm not sure how effective that is.
So a little random side note, now that we're at this point, when this originally came out, I had done a reaction to it with my friend who, has seen like all of Supernatural and whatever. Unfortunately, Warner Brothers took it down, so you can't watch it anymore. But maybe I need to see if I can get this clip and send it to you guys. But when this like shot came onto the screen, I remember like everybody was laughing because of it, and it's one of those. If you had seen my reaction video, then you know this moment. But like, yeah, as soon as we saw the body hanging and whatever, I was like, yes, he's dead. And everyone's like, why are we cheering he's dead? And I'm like, because he's trying to steal this fortune from Scooby. Anyway, that's really random. I'll have to see if I can find that clip and send it to you guys.
Oh, that'd be very interesting. That's really cool. And a very, very horrific death, if I do say so. But yeah, maybe they deserved it. Oh gosh, we then get into a bit of the weird, where we've got Velma now that's admiring Sam's shoulders.
Oh gosh, yeah.
That's like a recurring theme. Like, oh my
Those
gosh,
shoulders, jinkies.
I don't know. Like, it is weird because they seem to be picking and choosing, and it's funny. But I'm questioning the logic. So, on one hand, you have the gang acting like they would normally. They're not noticing the blood. They're ignoring the gore. And yet at the start, Fred mentions cancer. Now we've got Velma kind of getting excited because of Sam's shoulders. And it's a little bit like, what is it? Are they aware and this stuff's just been hidden? Or what? It just doesn't make sense from my point of view. And it doesn't take away from the episode, but if I'd rather them act like this all the time, or act completely like they would in the original series all the time, and there just be a bit more of a line drawn between when they're going to act a certain way and when they're going to act how they would act if they were reacting to this as people, not just the script of the time.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
But of course, when we get to the kind of let's split up and look for clues, we've got Dean, who of course wants to team up with Daphne. And Sam actually tries to tell Velma about the real monsters that they faced, but Velma doesn't really believe him, which you'd understand. Again, it's kind of Velma just doing their typical thing of being skeptical, but it doesn't annoy me in this special purely for the fact that I do think it's to like hammer home the fact that this is a non-supernatural world as we know, clashing with a supernatural world. And if there was like, and if Velma was open to the idea like, oh yeah, well we've seen this in a past adventure, it might have been lessened, because then what would be the surprise? What would they need to be protected from? Not a whole lot. But it's just good to have that contrast.
Yeah.
So, and then we've also got Dean asking Daphne what her taste in men is, and she pretty much just describes Fred, which, and a lot. Oh my gosh, it's actually kind of funny because the last thing that she says is, "Oh, and an ascot wouldn't hurt."
See, I think this is quite interesting. The ascot thing, like, it's one of the first times that we see her without a scarf, Fred without his ascot in those outfits, and it also contributes to their look of just looking so overwhelmed with everything that's happening. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the way her dress falls, it looks almost like it's ripped at the neck. It looks quite jagged, like she's quite stressed, like some like big fights just happened. And pretty much the same with Fred as well. So it does just add to that overwhelming feeling that they kind of experience.
Yeah, very like imagery. Like it's what you'd expect, but they're feeling the world a bit more. Like there's actual consequences. But I guess onto the pure fun section, we finally get the theme song. Now, SmASH, do you know if this was the same recording that they used originally, or did they get someone to come in and remaster it?
Let me go find that scene really quick, and I will tell you in a heartbeat. Give me just 2 seconds.
I mean, if it was re-recorded, they've got it pretty much spot on, because it gives you that nostalgic feeling so much, and it was great to finally hear it.
It's been a hot minute since I've seen this, so I'm not recalling immediately.
No, but I think it was right that they used it for a chase scene because, again, if you're just a Supernatural fan and you've not seen Scooby since the original series, there's going to be distinct things that you remember. And so I think to bring that nostalgia to people, there's that theme tune, there's the hallway chase scene that they've got going on, which also features a Scrappy cameo, which is extra interesting. I can't believe that they got Scrappy just like running around between the hallways. I thought that was so fun.
I know, I cannot believe that they threw in Scrappy. I mean, that was really fun, but I was, taken back. I was like, whoa.
Yeah, I'm surprised that like Warner Brothers or whatever allowed that, because it'd be like the most recent time that Scrappy's been introduced, and it's not been to like either take them out of the canon as in 13 Ghosts, or to just kind of make fun of them like it was seen in Mystery Incorporated. It's been the most recent legitimate use for Scrappy, although I don't know why they would do that, because I would almost think that it's the perfect chance to bring in characters, well, other characters that haven't been there for a while. Like almost Scooby-Doo could have been part of that chase scene. Like other iconic monsters could have been part of that, just to like bring home the nostalgia. But it's nice to see them there. Although I don't think they had Scrappy-Doo in the original series, did they?
No.
They never did.
So just a nice little Easter egg there that they included.
So about the theme song, it is the original one. They did not re-record it. It is pulled straight from the actual source.
That's nice. I'm glad that they did that, because then it's stuff that we remember, it's stuff that we love, it's nostalgia. Oh gosh, there's a very interesting scene here with Dean checking out Daphne.
Yep. They animated that one very particularly.
Yeah, like, damn.
Oh,
No, they gave Daphne some curves. Like,
Oh,
geez.
oh, they gave her lines.
Like, yeah. Jeez. Bit hot and heavy there. But this is something I've never thought of until now. What would the canonical age difference be between Dean and Daphne in these scenes? Is Daphne just 16 in the original show?
Yep.
And how old are we guessing Dean is?
Let's see.
I mean, he doesn't look old. Like, he's definitely a nice young man, but definitely nowhere near 16.
Oh no, he's probably at least got to be 30 or something.
Let's see. Do we have IMDb? I kind of want to check this, because it's fun and games, right? And honestly, it blows me away. As a Daphne fan, they do something special in this episode, but in context, it's
the closest they've ever been to devoting something to Daphne, really, from what we've seen so far.
It's kind of sad, but you're right. Apart from the 2002 movie.
I guess we've not reviewed that, though. If we're talking about what we've reviewed, the closest thing to something been for Daphne was Samurai Sword.
Yeah, and even then, Scooby takes the limelight by the end of it.
Mm.
You're right, actually.
Yeah,
It's kind of bad, though, that the most Daphne-centric thing is purely someone, like, lusting after them. Which...
Isn't that what you spend all your day doing?
Yeah, but if I was to make a Daphne thing, she wouldn't just be there being curvy. She'd be strong, determined, powerful, smart. Like, there'd be levels to it. It wouldn't just be, oh, here's Daphne, but we've made her a bit bustier and she's bending over. Like, that shouldn't be what the first Daphne-centric thing that that should be, really. Like, it's fine to have that be an element to it, but it shouldn't be the thing. But in a way, they kind of make Velma more of that by the end of it. It's kind of like a twist in perception. But I think they've always tried to play around with Velma a bit more like that, because they know that a large majority of the fan base have that kind of nostalgia for Linda Cardellini's portrayal of it, leaning into that a bit more, but I don't know.
So by that time, about Dean would have been 20 years older than Daphne.
So he's 36.
Yeah, he ended the series being 37.
God. So like a 36-year. Oh my god. I mean, technically, United Kingdom law, it wouldn't be illegal, but yeah, it is. I would say that was quite questionable. Now, whether that is something that they thought about, I don't know. I suppose, though, in context, if he was used to watching this as a kid, Daphne would have seemed a bit older. Like, obviously, say for example, if I grew up as, a 10-year-old, 12-year-old, watching Scooby-Doo, 2002, when Sarah Michelle Gellar was 25, there's gonna be a stage where I'm watching that and I'm twice her age in that movie. So you could look at it like, if he was into Daphne when he was first watching it as a kid, I don't know. It's just dodgy, but well, I don't know. What do you think of that? Do you think that's a problem, or do you just think they've just used it for fun?
I think in the sense of supernatural, because again, this is a supernatural episode. I think it's all just fun for the adults, watching it and whatever. But, if we were to look at it in Scooby-Doo eyes, there's a movie we haven't talked about yet that we're getting close to that we're going to have this same conversation with, that is just like can we stop putting Daphne in these situations?
Yeah. And it's just weird to me because it seems like they don't know what to do with Daphne in situations like this, because for all she's meant to be the kind of cliche pretty character, so many people just see Velma fit that role that it's kind of like it seems like Daphne always gets the worst of it. Like, Velma can have the love interest and Velma can have people be interested in her, but it's Daphne the one that's in like dodgy situations, so it's not great, but it's fun. I'd say that the attempted kiss at the end of the chase scene, after all the times of Daphne avoiding him, is a bit harassy, if that's a word. But it never progresses. So moving on, we get a bit more into the fight scenes, I want to say, and we get a Shaggy that's thrown out of the window, and Sam and Dean seem to know that iron is a ghost's weakness, so that I guess that's something that's established in the main Supernatural show. We don't really get that here. We're not really. It's not explained to us why that's the case or how they know that's the case, but it is, and it seems to work relatively well. Again, though, very unsettling to see Fred's nose start to bleed. It's like something that you wouldn't expect to see, but it's cool that it kind of brings it into the element of realism more. But it's like, imagine some of the other things that we've seen if it had these consequences. Like, the gang would have been in such rough condition like so many times.
Yeah.
And then of course Shaggy's arm's broken. And I don't know, they seem to hold it together in a very old-fashioned way. Like, they have like a plank of wood that they tie stuff around. I don't know if that's because they're just in the middle of nowhere and they've got like no medical supplies, but it almost made them seem like they're from the distant past. And obviously, would this episode have come out in 1969?
At least either 1969 or 1970.
So obviously I wasn't alive in 1969 or 1970, but I'm sure they didn't just tie planks of wood to wounds. I want to say that they're a bit more advanced than that. Like that's
Right.
kind of medieval, but I'm kind of interpreting it like they were just in the middle of nowhere and had no other suppliers.
I really like Shaggy's comment here too, because he says something very kind of brief, but if you know your Scooby lore, then you can catch it. But he, when he does break his arm, he's like, freaking out, like, "Are you kidding me? How'd this happen?" Whatever. And he says something along the lines of, "I jumped out of a biplane and was fine," or whatever, and that a reference to the very first episode of Scooby-Doo when him and Scooby are in a airplane in the museum and crash into the Black Knight.
Oh yeah, because and again that's with Wickles, isn't it? The museum creator.
Yeah.
That's cool how they've made a reference to that. And going on from that, I had some more questions for you because when like the gang start freaking out, you've got Daphne going, "Oh my gosh, am I going to go to heaven? Am I going to go to hell?" Dean mentions a handful of villains such as Iron Face, the Black Knight, Space Coot, Ghost Clown, Minor 49er, and I think some of them they haven't even faced yet. Like, I think Iron Face weren't they in the, I don't know how to describe it, but the intro's like got the 10,000 volt ghost there.
Yeah, Iron Face is from the third series, so the Scooby-Doo show, so they technically had like 5 seasons to go before they even got to that villain.
So that's interesting. Oh, I kind of want to think though that we haven't even delved into this universe at all to an extent, because with the mention of Iron Face, the fact that when they finally meet Iron Face, they're not like saying, have we heard that name before? It's kind of like there has to be a version of the reality going on from this episode where they've noticed that, and that could have led to a number of things. Maybe that's even why the kind of repetitive nature of unmasking villains becomes stale to them, leading on to Zombie Island. But again, speculation, but it's just so interesting to think that like they're just pulling names from anywhere. And I don't even think Iron Face is too iconic, are they? I think they could have maybe named some more. Perhaps Iron Face people will remember from Cyber Chase more than the original, more than the series, but even then, I think the Tar Monster would have been a better name to drop because they were translated in Monsters Unleashed as well.
Mm-hmm.
But then we've got the Supernatural team. Oh yeah, sorry.
Oh no, you're fine. I was just gonna note that the episode that they're in, A Night of Fright is No Delight, was technically the 16th episode of Scooby-Doo, and so they were actually still in the first season. So, there's, a ton that they still hadn't even, come across.
Oh, so they hadn't even met the Creeper at this point, had they?
Yeah, no, they hadn't gotten to the Creeper yet.
Because I always remember that those were later episodes, because I think season 2 was the season that kicked us off with the kind of chase music. I remember the Creeper's music a lot. Oh, who else had banging music? There was that Mr. Hyde episode, great song in that. The werewolf episode. Oh, I want to watch season 2 now. I think Millie does as
There's
well.
only 8 episodes in season 2.
We should watch them. Well, we've got them actually. I want to find season 3 though, but we've got season 1 and season 2. We should have really watched A Night of Fright Is No Delight in preparation, but we're not too prepared. Maybe next time. So where are we now in regards to everything? Oh yeah, so the Supernatural team reveal the weapons, so they've got a trunk full of real guns and different kind of aspects. I think they tried and hand Velma a shotgun.
But yeah, they did.
And that was weird. I don't know how effective it would have been. It's a bit odd. I need to see if there's like some more context behind what they bring. If like in the Supernatural show they filled it with like some Ghostbusters thing. But regardless, ultimately they decided for a bit more of a Scooby-Doo approach and have Fred build a trap. But that failed, and then they're kind of like, oh well, Fred's traps never work anyway. And I don't know how true that is. Is it true for the original series? Because I know that Shaggy and Scooby definitely mess up a handful of them, but I'm sure a few of them must have worked.
You know, I get it that they, for this in particular, they needed kind of the supernatural ending, because again, supernatural episode, not a Scooby-Doo one. But the trap in this original episode did work. So
that's kind of mad. So they're just dissing Fred for... Well, okay, I guess in context though, Dean has a reason to like diss Fred, being the like almost romantic rival, as weird as that is, knowing what we know, but I like that because it's almost a bizarre twist on what we're ranting about all the time in the podcast, in that instead of a woman being introduced for Fred to go after and like and Daphne to be jealous over, it's almost reversed. Like, we don't really see Fred getting jealous except for like always barging in between them, saying, oh yay, now it'll just be the three of us, that's good. It's almost reversed because like Daphne doesn't reciprocate these feelings, but it's kind of interesting to have them almost be that third person that would come in, a bit like Lena or other people from that show. So it's interesting because we've never really seen that. I guess there was Bram the Vampire from Music of the Vampire.
yeah.
So now they initiate Operation Bookworm, which was essentially just tripping the kind of Phantom Shadow down into the trap to be immersed or trapped in a salt circle, which I assume is something built into the supernatural mythology that, and I've heard it sometimes, like I know that there's some people that go spreading salt in door places or like window ledges because of something. Like, Millie, you must know someone like that, right? You know, that like spread salt. There's this thing. There's a particular monster that it's meant to keep away, and I can't think what.
No, I'm trying to think. There's certain things where you can't cross salt. So I'm thinking of Hocus Pocus, where is it the witches or the dead that they arise can't cross the salt path, which is why they're sat in the graveyard with a circle of salt around them.
Ah. I think slugs have a similar issue.
Yeah.
But they're trapped in that circle, and the Phantom Shadow is ultimately revealed to be a child, which is sad, to be honest. It's not what I expected, and it almost it draws the line between Scooby-Doo and Supernatural for me, and it's almost one of the driving forces that's making me want to watch Supernatural after this, in that once the child finds out, or once the child reveals to them that they're kind of being manipulated by a bad person that has taken control of this like this knife, this Swiss Army knife that belonged to the kid's father, and just the way that they act compassionately towards them, it's almost a bit, it again reminds me of Doctor Who, where for all their fighting monsters, they're also compassionate to victims of circumstance, although I think the Phantom Shadow was a bit more destructive than they needed to be redeemed. Like, I'd say if you're a scared kid, maybe don't act like you're finding so much pleasure in like beheading people, like, you know, but we don't really have time in the episode for them to linger on that. But I do like how they're just compassionate towards the kid, and ultimately,
Yeah, sweet.
And
also the gang as well, though. It's like they just want to help everybody. They do seem like good people.
And it's what's making me want to watch it. And again, it's not just a simple case of black and white. And it leads me to believe that it's not just monsters bad, supernatural team good. Sometimes the monster can be the victim. Sometimes the human can be the real monster. Again, like Scooby-Doo, like it could be a human that's under the mask of everything. So that was good. And again, it's seen in a lot of like explanations, but we flash back to when this, I don't know what the name is, but he's kind of like a sleazebag real estate guy.
Yeah, I'm seeing if I put the name down here.
Bit of a greasy villain.
But again, someone that you'd completely forgotten about at the start. I really like how they tie that back in at the end. Just that, oh, do you remember this person? Well, this is what they've been doing. This is how it altered the progression of the story from when this episode was originally aired and that kind of thing. I like it a lot. I like that little...
Yeah. And because of the kids' compliance, it almost leads Dean now, again, what Smash was talking about, to plan to save the Scooby Gang from the truth. So then...
It wonders if you'd leave a lasting impression, though. You know, like how they say, like, oh, if you time travel and... Is it the butterfly effect or something? I can't remember. I heard about it somewhere a few days ago. But, like, one change would change so much permanently. Like, if they hadn't been like, oh, yeah, it's a real person, would they have just never been able to solve mysteries again? Which is hilarious because, like, we've all seen Zombie Island, right? And the witch's ghost. And obviously they're like, Scooby-Doo's like, oh, well, let's have 10 different timelines and we're just going to hop in and out of every single one of them. But at the same time, it's like, okay, well, we saw this. It was real. And they managed then.
Well, it's like that thing, like, if it was never revealed to them and they believed it was supernatural, well, we know that very few things, like, came through, like, other things could have come through that kind of portal with them, or, like, if you think about the fact that they know that this exists, and then the next, God knows how many years of mysteries are just fake, you could imagine, especially, you know, Daphne and all that, then going on to be the Zombie Island impressions of them, where they are looking for that. And again, maybe I don't know, something else must happen to like have like the cat people be in Zombie Island. Like, I don't know, I think there's like a world of possibilities that you could have with this. I really want to find like, I really want them to make almost like a what if Scooby-Doo series.
That would be cool.
Oh, lots of people have been talking about that actually.
Oh, there's so many that I want to see though.
What if Lester wasn't experimented on?
What if Lester wasn't? I like that.
What if Sarah Ravencroft really was a Wiccan?
Oh, I'm trying to think of one. I would like to see like a kind of what if the evil mask figure won in Monsters Unleashed, and like we got to see all of the monsters' costumes like come to life and just wreak havoc.
What if Scoob?
Oh my gosh,
Scrappy wasn't left at the side of the road?
Bit dicey.
Oh, that.
Bit dicey.
That would be
The
an
entire
interesting
community would still be in love with.
one.
He wouldn't have been banned from the community. He'd have been allowed to appear in other Scooby movies in the last 15 years.
That's amazing.
Then you could do, if we're talking about this particular special, you could do like, what if Sam and Dean were never able to get out of Scooby-Doo?
Oh, and they were just there throughout the whole thing. That would have been amazing.
JB's sat here like, I hope he got with Daphne. I hope he'd have got with Daphne. There's hope for me. There's hope for me. He might have got with Daphne.
Well, he might have. He might have. We never know. It might be a bit weird, but maybe he would be aged down, right? I'm sure that's a possibility. I'm sure that's absolutely.
Well, he probably would have never aged at that point.
That's true. That's true. I want to see a what if almost. Oh no! I want to see what if like the gang just never formed, or what if they never got back together after the 2002 movie, and like it was just one of the gang that answered like the call to Spooky Island. That would have been interesting. And I don't know which one of them it would have been. It would have been Daphne, wouldn't it? Because she still would have been
Interestingly, it
determined
would
to
have
solve the
had to
mystery.
have been Scooby and Shaggy. Because the other three, like, just got their souls taken and thrown into the bowl.
Yeah, but who would have responded if only one of them would have responded?
But I mean, to have done it effectively, it had to be Shaggy and Scooby.
Oh yeah, well yeah, you're right, because Scrappy still would have wanted revenge on Scooby ultimately. I want to say that was the main one that you wanted to get.
Yeah, and they were
That's
the
the
sacrifice,
sacrifice.
yeah.
So yeah, you're right. All it would have been is, oh, here's all you can eat. Oh, all you can eat, and then they would have gone. But whether they would have won or lost is anyone's guess. We'll have to.
See, if it was you, they literally just would have needed to have been like, oh yeah, Daphne's gonna be there. Woo!
Well, you're right. You're right. And in fact, I found a signed Sarah Michelle Gellar Buffy the Vampire Funko Pop on eBay.
Oh.
It's £580 plus shipping plus import fees, and I'm not gonna do it. But I'm gonna calculate how many years I have to work to buy one, and it will happen.
But then you can have children and things that are a completely different priority.
Now I'll sell one of the kids to get it. Eh?
My kids.
I can do it. It can be done.
Dad needs
Papa
Gala.
needs this Funko.
You know, well, no. We won't go that far, but I would be tempted. So, Velma unmasks the villain, and I think it's the villain that... Is it the villain that it was in the show, or were they killed? And they've... What have they done?
So basically, they had the kid disguise himself as the actual villain of the episode.
Okay, so that's like a bit of restoring in the timeline. Oh, and the kid also fixes Shaggy's arm. And again,
Yes,
I'm noticing, even in scenes like this, they really have made Daphne very curvy.
Well, I think, like, because that thing happened to Shaggy's arm, she lost a scarf and Fred lost their ascot, and that literally just added a new look to them completely, I think. Like I said, they looked very distressed and that kind of thing. But as well, it's the first time she's worn anything like open neck and all that kind of stuff.
Like, she's giving Jessica Rabbit a run for her money in there. Like, it's mad what they've done. They should just make this the normal
You've watched
animation.
Camp Scare, haven't you?
Yeah, well, I'm just saying, unless it's like that, well, I don't know, even in
You've watched Aloha, where there's like a full bikini, and now you're like, oh,
okay.
just the standard look is absolutely great.
To be fair, it's not unheard of, and I would almost say that she is on equal in terms of like figure in this. She looks the same as she did in almost Mystery Incorporated. I think they do a similar thing there for some reason. I don't think for the back area, but for the front area.
Oh god.
I'd say it's equally in Mystery Incorporated, right? I don't know why they've done it, because they've not altered Velma at all from what I can see. So I don't know why they've done that, but I guess it's to maybe make the kiss at the end more shocking, but there's a contrast.
You know when you're like online and you're like, oh, why are all these people talking about Velma? What about Daphne? What about Daphne? This is why Velma doesn't need to try. Daphne's got a lot of edit.
No, I don't know what you're saying. I don't acknowledge what you're saying to me right now. I don't. But one day I might. I don't understand though. Like, I would say there were more Velma fans than Daphne fans.
You're turning me into one of them.
Why?
I always preferred Daphne until you started talking.
Well, no, I'm just noticing what they've done, what they've altered, and I'm enjoying it, but I'm just wondering why.
Right, come on, creepy, carry on.
So, Castiel kind of has a moment with Shaggy and Scooby, and it's a bit annoying because I feel like the second Castiel says the word danger, Shaggy and Scooby run away, because it's almost like they know that episode time's running out and they just need an easy solution for the Supernatural gang and the Scooby gang to separate ways. And so it's a bit frustrating not to have like a definitive goodbye, thanks for the help, and just to have them run away because it's convenient. But then we get Velma kissing Sam, which is why I think they've kind of made Daphne seem a bit more desirable, because they want to make a clear distinction between Daphne being her and kind of nerdy Velma, and then for Velma to do that kind of 360 turn and
to be fair, they did that with Camp Scare as well. Like, Daphne had a bit of a glow up for Camp Scare, there was a bit more effort went into that, and that's the one where like the police warden or something was like, oh, hey, beautiful, and I don't mean you.
No, that guy was a pervert, he was. Absolute.
Did you like the wrong one, JayBee?
No, absolute pervert, that one. We don't need to talk about them again. So yeah, Jinkies, Sam's shoulders are good. Then now the Supernatural team are back in the real world, but it's actually the Supernatural world. But it's funny because we almost do get a little bit of adult humor here, unless this is like context that I don't know about. We have a reference to these people called the Cartwright twins, and I think it's Dean goes home, that's the most fun I've ever had, and that includes the Cartwright twins. And then Castiel's like, well, what did you do with the Cartwright twins? And I think it's an obvious adult joke. I think we kind of know what they're implying, but it does so in a way that isn't too crude. And I'm again wondering if in a normal episode of Supernatural, if they would have made jokes about it in a bit more of a blunt way. It's anyone's guess. There's a bit of adult humour in there, if that's your cup of tea. But I appreciated it because it just made it seem like they were their own thing, like they weren't pandering for a certain audience. But it was good. Sam and Dean find the object in the TV, and then they almost rumble the sleazy guy that's attempting to con the manager out of the shop. And Dean shows up in the ascot, which I thought was absolutely hilarious.
Yeah, that was cute. I like that a lot.
Because to be fair, he does suit it well, but it almost adds like another layer into it. Like if you imagine he's been drooling over Daphne the whole time, and one of her requirements for like a guy is, oh, and an ascot wouldn't hurt.
Yeah, I'm like, how did it take this long? I'm surprised he didn't do that after the first 10 minutes.
Yeah, imagine that. He could have just stolen words. But it is cool, and I always forget, were ascots a genuine thing? Like, obviously they existed, but were they like in trend at some point?
Yeah, so I think I've explained this story in a previous podcast episode, but I'll try to keep it real short. Basically, when they were developing the characters for the original series and creating their designs and stuff, they knew Fred was going to kind of be the jock and whatever. And at the time of creating the characters' designs, ascots became this huge trend for guys and whatever, but it was a very short-lived trend, so by the time the actual show started airing, the trend had already passed.
Oh gosh. To be fair though, I think they should bring it back. Like, I don't think it's a bad accessory.
Why don't you try and start it, JayBee?
Oh, my neck's too fat for an ascot. Maybe when I was 17 I could have rocked it, but not now.
I think just summarising on Dean's personality, the Scooby ending as well, where he tries to do the thing.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I like that.
And he like almost like fanboys out because the villain says, I would have gotten away with it if it weren't for you meddling kids.
Like JayBee unironically says that just when, like, literally his mum can be like, oh, did you have dinner tonight? And he's like, oh, I would have got away with it too. Like, he just randomly says that all the time, so
like,
good.
Honestly, legit, if like I'm out and about or somewhere in like London or Manchester and I could get in real trouble, like if someone like calls the police on me because they think I'm like a terrorist or something, if I'm getting put in like a police car, I couldn't not say it. I would have got away with it too. It weren't for you meddling. Like, come on, how do you resist saying that? But then they'll think I'm guilty. But it's just such an iconic line. But I love it. And I just think it's amazing how they just do it. Like, they even make a little Al Capone reference in there. Because I was a bit shocked at how easily the shopkeeper was just accepting, oh yeah, this guy's been using a ghost to attack people. I was almost thinking something must have happened in the Supernatural universe that have made ghosts just an acceptable thing, but then it's established that nobody would believe that version of events, so they had to like get him for tax, which is
it was good enough for Al Capone then. So yeah, I think that does it for the plot and like the review and everything. Is there anything anyone would like to add before we go to the smash or pass kind of decider?
I just want to apologize quickly. I know that everyone else is dealing with this so much better than me, but like, in context, this is we are recording this like 3 or 4 weeks in advance, and we just finished that. We're recording this back to back with the mystery map episode, and for the last 20 minutes, my voice has been going and going. I probably won't be able to talk for tomorrow.
It's because you've like full on carried this, because I think I was like lagging after the mystery map, and obviously we have to be up at like 6 or 7 to make sure the Freddie Prinze thing gets posted for the Galaxy Comic-Con. And it's currently 3:15 in the morning, and like I said, we have to be up at 6.
Yeah, so I just wanted to apologize.
So
My voice is gone pretty much, so I apologize. But Smash, do you have anything to add before the big verdict?
I don't believe so. I say that, and then I have another. The only little fun story I think I'll add is that they did air this special at some sort of convention. It might have been Comic-Con, but they brought it to a convention, and they played it for an audience, a live audience, before it aired on TV, and the whole like race little scene between the 2 cars. I know everybody was like cheering and stuff, but it was funny because they all the attendees were like sworn to secrecy. They couldn't say really anything about what they saw, but the reaction to that particular scene basically just got out that like everybody was just going crazy about that one scene. And so when my friend and I actually watched it together, and that's when I did my reaction. And so we sat and debated which car was gonna be the winning one, because she was going into it more for the supernatural side, and I was going into it for Scooby and stuff. So it was a fun little friendly battle of what car was gonna win and whatever. But just a little random side story with this.
I like that. That's nice.
I love Smash's tangents, like little stories and information. It's good.
Yeah, well, this is.
I like this. It's like just like talking all the way through, and then then JB's like, Smash, anything else to add? And I'm like, yes. This is why we have our expert here.
Well, I think
it's time.
We're all a good mixture of different perspectives. That's my thing, and it's like I think producing stuff like this is why I wake up in the morning,
You don't wake up in the morning, you wake up in the evening.
This is why I wake up in the evening, It brings me, it's a new lease of life. It's a new lease of life. So, wait.
Verdict time? So, JB, a Halloween special of ScoobyNatural. Are you saying smash or pass?
So, I think that this is how a crossover is done right. Not only does it incorporate both of the kind of things that they're crossing over, but it doesn't bog us down with lore and mythology. And a part of me thinks that that's why they bring it right back to the original season of Scooby, because if they're kind of capitalizing on the nostalgia of people that are new to watching it, or if they're primarily Supernatural fans, they can almost hop on board in either something that they would have recognized as kids, or is a simple enough format to follow along with, as opposed to trying to do it in a movie or trying to do it into an episode of Mystery Incorporated. Similarly with Supernatural, again, we have no context whatsoever in regards to these two, and yet they make them likable, they make us care about their kind of point of view, and even their thwarting of the bad guy at the end, you can tell that they're just basically good people, like the gang, that just want to defeat some bad guys. And I just have a lot of fun with it. There's nothing that I really have to complain about. There's a few questionable things, but ultimately this is amazing, and it definitely isn't going to be my last viewing of ScoobyNatural. So I would say that ScoobyNatural gets an amazing smash from JayBee. Milly, would you smash or pass ScoobyNatural?
I have to agree with everything you just said. It was amazing. They didn't try too hard to make you want to go through all the Supernatural series, because they weren't like, oh, this is the lore, this is what happened when their great aunt Bertha was in series 1 episode 3, and everything, this very much existed in its own right, whether you'd seen Scooby before, Supernatural before. It was very, very good. So, as someone who had seen Scooby before, like I said, there was a few things that I found really good, like the kind of person in the costume, the car just magically appearing like the Mystery Machine does. There was lots of little things that I like. It was really interesting to give Daphne's character such a strong dynamic, because normally, you know, romantic stuff, it's all about Fred, like, oh, Shirley and Mystery Map, yay! Captain Big Lake Moose, whatever the camp scare thing was. Literally, there's always someone for Fred. So I guess it switched up a little bit for Daphne, which was good to see. And no, there's just a lot that I liked. So of course I'm gonna have to say SmASH. This is certainly not gonna be the last time we watched ScoobyNatural. It was really good. So that just leaves you, SmASH. Would you say SmASH or pass for ScoobyNatural?
All right, yeah. So, I had heard about this crossover a few years before it actually aired. I followed along with the development of it as much as I could. There was an image that kind of got out that was very much just kind of an announcement image. It was never like this official image from the episode or anything, which, I can send over to you guys if I can find it. But it was just kind of the announcement image. And then once it got closer, they dropped like 2 or 3 pictures from the actual episode, which actually all of the pictures that they showed were from the chase sequence. But, as soon as I saw that, I was like, oh, okay, yes, they're using, the direct-to-video movie animation, because I had wondered, I was like, what animation style are they going to use? Because we were in the time of Be Cool Scooby-Doo just kind of ending, and I was like, I highly doubt they're going to use that animation, especially with all the backlash that they got from it. But since they were going to go into a classic episode of Scooby-Doo, I was like, are they going to try to make it look dated, or, like really, really close to how that was? But I thought going with the movies animation, the current movies animation was the best route to go. I don't think they should have done anything different in that sense. Then once it got closer to the release, I actually took a trip to Seattle, kind of for a YouTube trip. Went and met up with a YouTuber. Her name is Monica Church. But went and met up with her, and we, there was this team. Long story short, I went to do the Big Climb for Leukemia in Seattle for this YouTube trip, and during that time, all the merchandise started to come out for this special, and a lot of it went to Hot Topic here. And so, like, I went to a Hot Topic in Las Vegas because we had to drive to Las Vegas to fly out to Seattle. And so, in Las Vegas, I went to a Hot Topic to see what they had. And then once we got into Seattle, I went to check out what, merchandise they had at that Hot Topic near our hotel and whatever. And I ended up getting a really cool shirt. Unfortunately, I got, they only had it available in a large, and so it doesn't really fit me. So what I usually do is I'll wear that and then wear a button shirt over it, but keep it unbuttoned, and that way it helps it not look so big on me. But then they also came out with a Scooby plushie specifically for this crossover, which, looking at the plush, you could not tell it, came from the ScoobyNatural crossover at all. It's just a Scooby plush, but I got that, and it's, like one of my favorite plushes of Scooby-Doo that I have. So, I brought that back on the plane with me back home from Seattle and whatever. Then once we got back is when it aired, and I watched it, with my friend Angie. And again, I did a reaction video, but first took it down, unfortunately. And I loved it. I loved all of the references and stuff. There's a lot of nitpicky things as a Scooby fan that I can pick out, but if you sit and dwell on those, then it's gonna, take out your enjoyment of it. And I was like, I can't sit and do that, even though, there are just a few things. My biggest nitpick of this is just how they got to the mansion, because I was like, no, it's supposed to be out on this island and they're supposed to feel stranded, in this house for this night, whereas in this crossover, technically, they could literally just get in their car and leave and be like, nope, not dealing with this tonight, so that was my biggest nitpick, but you just kind of have to ignore it and enjoy it for what it is. And knowing nothing really of Supernatural, I still found it very enjoyable. I didn't feel like, at least, that there was really anything I needed to know of Supernatural to enjoy this crossover. And, I went into it purely for Scooby-Doo. And I feel like for what the characters were and the time period that they were pulling them from, the characters were very respected, and the property, was taken care of and everything. And I thought it was just honestly a lot of fun. It was something special, but I also don't think it's one of those must-watch things. It's one of those, if you want to see Scooby-Doo in a different light, then definitely go watch it. But if you don't want your Scooby to be altered from its purity, then you also don't have to watch it, and you can just go watch the original episode. So after my long tangent, I am definitely pass for this one, or not a pass, sorry, smash, sorry. We are smashing this one.
Hey, triple smash. That is
For the Halloween special, yay!
incredible. Happy Halloween, everyone. Like we say, this was recorded so long in advance, so if you're looking for some community news that we normally do at the end of these episodes, please refer to the episode that would have come out yesterday, because that will obviously have been recorded a bit more recently. So anything that you want to see up to date, refer to yesterday's episode.
Which, providing we're on track, should be Frankencreepy. And again, providing we're on track, subscribe and join us next week for the review of Moon Monster Madness.
Ooh.
So I believe that's everything for this episode. Again, happy Halloween, everyone. Remember to subscribe, and also to subscribe to Smash's channel. Their description and links will be in the description, so go and check that out. So yeah, please like, comment and subscribe to JayBee Milly and Smash.
Hey, happy Halloween.
Ooh, happy Halloween.